Welcome back to Unfolded. This is the second episode of our second season, and today we're delighted to welcome Harriet Gardiner from the charity Campaign for National Parks, and we'll speak to her all about the work they're doing and how national parks and maps tie together. Thank you for joining us, Harriet.
No worries.
It's
Thanks
really,
for having me.
really kind of you to give us your time, actually. We've got probably lots in common with the work you're doing and the work that we do at HARVEY Maps. And whenever we speak to customers and so on, the national park is such an obvious kind of focal point of outdoors activity, holidays, and it's a real focus for HARVEY Maps. Obviously, we're if you know a bit about us, we focus on hiking areas or running areas, places of natural beauty, really. So, tell us a bit about your role at Campaign for National Parks, if you can.
Sure. So I'm the Senior Communications Officer at Campaign for National Parks. So I have a really fun job in doing all the external stuff, and I get to share our work and I get to create content around national parks. And so that's a really nice thing to be doing. And a lot of us get to go to the national parks, but it's just such a joy to have that as part of my job, to go and visit them.
Yeah. You've been with the charity long, or have you?
I've been here for about 3 years now, and we're a little charity, so there's only 9 of us, but we like to think that we pack a real punch, and we cover so many different areas of advocacy and campaigning, and we do project work. And so there's such a varied and exciting sort of different fields to be involved in at Campaign for National Parks.
Yeah. We'll come on to obviously what you guys are up to and what your main kind of work is at the moment. But just personally, are you a fan of the outdoors? Do you hike?
Yeah, I think it's the main way that I explore the outdoors. I mean, I don't know if I'd consider myself a hiker, but I think I like to go outside at least once a day. And actually, I was really lucky to grow up in the South Downs National Park. And within about 5 or 10 minutes from leaving my front door, I could be within like really beautiful chalk downsland. And I would just sort of spend my afternoon following footpaths, getting a bit lost, and then coming home again in the evening. And now sort of as an adult, I sort of from like more of a marine background, so I'm a scuba diving instructor, but now I'm kind of doing like the terrestrial equivalent. So I'm doing my lowland leader, and I've got my training tomorrow actually, and so I'll be outside for that. But that's obviously using lots of maps and ensuring that you are planning appropriately. And so I'd say it's a big part of my life, absolutely.
Coming on to kind of the work that you and the team are doing then, Harriet, obviously we've been having a look here at the website. The mission is to inspire action for wilder, inclusive national parks. Can you kind of explain a bit more about that for us?
Yeah, so us as an organisation, we're actually 90 years old this year. So we were created in the 30s. Thank you. Yes. Yeah. And we feel like we look quite good for 90. But we were created in the 30s because there's this real appetite for access to clean air and spaces, but because of like urbanization, industrialization, and the fact that it was just a lot of private land ownership meant that people couldn't get there. And so, we were created from a social justice movement about having that accessibility. And so that's always been a fundamental part of who we are, because we are independent from government and we are completely funded by individuals and, corporate sponsors and that kind of thing. It means that we are really perfectly placed to be a critical friend of the national parks and to challenge government and decision makers to do better for the environment and national parks. And so we really, really push the fact that we want national parks to be wilder, and we want them to be more accessible. And because national parks were created for the nation, they need to be accessible, safe, and welcoming for everybody in the country. And there's definitely work that needs to be done. And we're really proud to be pushing that and challenging people and making sure that progress is taken to make them better spaces for everyone.
Yeah, right at the heart of it. I was going to ask then, you've kind of touched on it, but yeah, the purpose of a national park. And I know we've got national parks in all kind of corners of Great Britain, and obviously each of them will be distinct in some way, but they must share a common purpose. And is that then just protecting that landscape, or is it far more than that as a purpose?
Yeah, so I've got them up in front of me because they're quite jargony, but they have all national parks have two purposes, and these are to conserve and enhance the natural beauty, wildlife, and cultural heritage, and to promote opportunities for public understanding and enjoyment of the special qualities of the parks, which essentially means it's about protecting the wildlife and the nature, and to, promote recreation and education for people to visit them. And funnily enough, the Broads, which is a national park in Norfolk, has its own special third purpose, which is around interest and navigation, because that's such a key part of the history and the heritage of the area.
Yeah. How when I look at a national park and I see a boundary on a map, the boundary can sometimes, when you look at any boundary on a map, it can be seen as arbitrary. I was interested to ask you about what makes a national park, the land within the boundary, different to the land just outside the boundary. Is there a key kind of difference?
I think the difference comes around the management of the land. And so every national park has a National Park Authority, which is a funded government body, and their purpose is to achieve the purposes of national parks and make sure that, and they have additional funding to manage visitors, make sure that they're accessible, run projects around nature, and to bring people in. There's also sort of legal definitions around land use, and I think there's a lot of misinformation around saying like, oh, you can't even change your front door in a national park, and that's not true. It's more around having appropriate development within a national park, because national parks aren't these isolated wildernesses. Like, people live there and there are communities, but it's making sure that you're not building a 10-story car park in the middle of a national park. It has to be appropriate and reflect the needs of the landscape and the communities as well.
So of the I think you said there were 13 national parks, is that right?
Yes.
They must have, so that they're all over. I mean, the closest one to us here in Doon is the Loch Lomond and Trossachs National Park. So I imagine that landscape differs markedly to, say, I think you said you were near South Downs. Is that your closest one? So what would you say are the kind of characteristics that bind national parks together? Maybe the physical characteristics to start with.
Yeah, they're designated for their sort of unique natural beauty. I think, I can't remember who the quote is attributed to, but it's about having spaces that you can walk for an entire day within nature without sort of hitting a town or something like that. That's very poorly remembered of me, but it's it's that quality.
I get the point though.
And it's that space, and it's that beauty, and it's the feeling. And it's really funny when coming to designate a national park, because the process is happening right now in North East Wales. And the designation it's exciting, and it's sort of almost not an arbitrary process, but it's going to a place and kind of going, does this feel like it should be in a national park? Is there that level of beauty? Is it there, that cultural heritage and that identity? And so you're so right, when you go to a different national park, they feel different. They've got the landscape's different, the communities are different, and
there's something about the promotion of the area as well. You see the brown sign, Lake District National Park this way, Yorkshire Dales National Park this way. You have a sense of you kind of get interested and intrigued by this area that has been designated. But I wanted to ask you about the North East Wales one. Is that the Glendower? I forget. I don't know the full name of the proposed park, but
no, that's right. It's I think I hope my pronunciation right. I think it's Glendon, but
you'd know better than me. Yeah,
fingers crossed. And actually, I was writing about this the other day, and it's sort of a nod towards a historic figure of Owain Glyndwr, who, you know, led rebellions, and like his sort of homeland was within the site designation, and so that's been a really interesting process to watch and see happening. And hopefully we will see it come to fruition, but it's a very, very long process.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, we have a national trail. There's a national trail of Glyndwr National Trail as well, which we have a map for. So there was a while ago, we obviously go and visit all the areas that we make maps of and check that the thing is factually correct, before you publish. So the team would have visited there as well. So it'd be really interesting to and we get asked about that area quite a lot in terms of making a map. We'll have to we'll definitely keep an eye on progress there. But, coming back to the national parks themselves then. So I'm also interested to know, sort of now more than ever, what are they? Would you say they carry a greater importance now more than ever? Are people they're trying harder to get outside and get some calm away from normal life, or what are your sort of thoughts on that as a team?
I think obviously knowing what I know, working within the industry, I'd say that they're so important. And we're a tiny island, and we have there's a lot of pressure on the landscapes, and we need to make sure that we're producing enough food and that there's the correct level of infrastructure and all these things. And it's just, they're really important. But then there's a sort of reflection on national parks that it's so vital to have these wild spaces that are for everyone, and then you can go there. And I'm sure, as when you go to a national park, you sort of feel that health and well-being benefit. You feel that sort of the nourishment that being in nature and being in such sort of vast areas of nature can do for you. And also what they can do for us around climate change mitigation and biodiversity loss, and areas of creating projects to renew the landscape is just going to be beneficial for everyone. And so yes, I would definitely say that they are so important now.
It's a fine balance as well. So we obviously, our business is effectively we're making maps of national parks and we're publishing them. And on the one hand, we're obviously encouraging people to visit, but it then must become a challenge in terms of managing those areas. Too many visitors, is that a problem, or is it something to welcome?
I think we never say there's too many visitors. I think there's definitely, because they are for everyone, we want people to visit them. That's why they were created, so that everyone has the access to enjoy nature. But there's definitely more work to be done around how you manage the challenges that come with visitor numbers, because if it's a beautiful area, whether it's in a national park or not, people are going to visit it. But the beauty of a national park is they have funding to manage visitor numbers, and there's also some responsibility on visitors to do the research to know, maybe don't go to the most popular sites, because there's so many other places that you can go to that are equally beautiful and interesting and accessible. There just needs to be a bit of time and education to
that's an interesting point, is how the national park almost becomes a symbol of, I'll just go to the national park because it ticks off everything I think I want. But you're right, just down the road from everyone is probably a nice space to explore, and you have the same benefit. And I think that's something that we constantly try and work on here is, we're making maps of other areas, not just national parks, because we want people to tell us that's where they want to go. And it is about education of, okay, once you have a map, how do you read the map? How does it tell you to plan your half-day walk or your long-day walk, whatever it might be? So, I think you're absolutely right, Harriet, on that one, is trying to is that message of getting everyone to understand what is there and the benefits of it. But, I was going to say, you've talked about kind of access and making these places accessible for all, just nudging it towards maps and a bit of navigation. And is there, do you have any kind of thoughts on whether there's a need for greater education on that? I suppose it touches on what we were just talking about, but is there any need to further education of map use in national parks?
I think so, because I think anybody who's gone to a national park, even if you've just turned up at a car park, you'll often see there is a map in the car park. You take a picture on your phone, and then you go and do that little walk and you use that map to get around. I mean, I think I would say for really wild spaces, unless you've got a map to follow, unless you know the area very well, you're probably going to get lost. And to be safe and accessible, having the maps and having the knowledge to use the maps is going to be really important. And I think the thing with national parks, having the people there, having the visitor centres, having the educational programs that they run for like school children is so beneficial, because then, especially with young people, they become the custodians who care about the place in the future. But if they don't have the skills to go to them and explore them safely, they're not going to have that connection and that love in the future. And so having the resources and the people and the educational materials is really important.
How closely do you guys then kind of work? You mentioned visitor centres, for example. Do you are you, as a charity, do you work closely with national park organisations and visitor centres and things like that, and any campaigns that you have running, or how does your work kind of run alongside the national park, I suppose, is my question.
So we work very closely with national park authorities,
obviously,
but their hands are kind of tied in certain ways because they are government funded. And actually, very sadly, since about 2010, national park authorities have seen about a 40 to 50% cut in their funding, and that has real knock-on effects to their educational programs. And we've seen visitor centre closing and people losing their jobs, and that's going to impact people's ability to get the resources and education they need to go and explore national parks. And so because we campaign on a very top level, we don't go into sort of the into the detail, but we say we do, and we have campaigned in the past on the budget cuts and stopping the budget cuts, and that is an ongoing campaign, because without the resourcing, they are essentially parks on paper and not in their purpose. But we've also been really lucky to have funding for projects such as, we've just finished one called New Perspectives, and that was focusing on getting young people into national parks and sharing their stories and upskilling them for leadership roles within national parks. And we've been very lucky to receive funding for a new project over 3 years, which is going to be even bigger and better and involve more people. And so, but we know other projects like that exist. And so it's linking up with youth organizations, with other charities, with other NGOs, and sharing our experience, sharing, the communications, and, raising the awareness that people need, and bringing in younger people and people who are facing barriers towards accessing national parks, so that people can access national parks.
What do young people, or what are the young people telling you then that about national parks? What's the kind of, are there a few key take homes from their interactions with you? So we were so lucky to work with such passionate young people. They're amazing, and we learned so much from them. But I think a lot of the barriers that young people face are around physically getting into a national park, because having a car is expensive. There's the cost of travel. A lot of public transport in rural areas isn't great, and it really needs to be improved. And so just getting into one is difficult enough as it is. And then when it comes to having their voices heard, like, young people have the passion and they have the skills needed to influence work that happens in national parks, and they should be on the board of trustees for national parks, because they have
that perspective to bring. And I think, but sometimes there's a lot of like, they don't feel confident, and we want to make sure young people feel confident to take on those leadership roles, to have their voices heard, because, you know, if we don't bring in those people, there's not going to be the future of national parks, because they need to change. And so that's been a really important area of our work.
Yeah, I can imagine it's very, very similar here, actually. You know, without, you know, the whole maps, printed map is one thing, a digital map is another. Where's the journey going with maps? How do you get young people to engage with such a detailed image, and you get them to understand it, and then that alone helps them, as you say, enter a national park because they feel more confident to engage with it. So it's really interesting to hear that, actually, and it sounds like a really interesting campaign that you guys have run. But how does the issue of access, does that come up a lot in terms of how it's mapped? And I know in England and Wales it's different to where we are in Scotland, access, but England and Wales, you rely on access land and rights of way. Is that a challenging kind of process? I mean, I imagine creating a new national park, for instance, that's going to be one major issue in how you sort of legally delineate those things. But does that come up at all in conversation?
Yeah, I guess it's around the sort of the awareness and the educational piece, because knowing where you can go when you're visiting these areas is so important. And obviously you're right, we're much more limited in England and Wales than you are in Scotland. And so you need to know where open access land is. You need to know where the public rights of way are. You need to know where, you know, where you are restricted, and things like military zones, and, you know, all those other kind of areas. And so having the knowledge of a map to know, you know, what's where is going to be really key in giving people the confidence to visit those areas. And so, but then you're right, there's sort of the gap, like how do we educate people into using maps and knowing how to use maps to like get the most out of their visits to these areas.
Do national parks, I know they kind of, the boundaries can change over time, and so it makes me sometimes think that a map is as much a navigation tool as also as a sort of a timestamp of a certain period of time. So do you ever sort of use historical maps of national parks or to refer to the changes?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, maps are so, it's funny because when I was thinking before I came to talk about this, I was like, how do we use maps at Campaign for National Parks? And then about 5 minutes later, I looked at a map to do our work, and I was like, we use maps all the time, and they're so important for so many different things. And you're from the historical level, it's so, because the way we talk in campaign, we have to have evidence to show our work, to show that, you know, there's land use problems, there's, you know, where the chalk streams are in a national park, that kind of thing. And so you need to show it visually. And then historically, if we're saying, you know, peatland is degraded by X amount over these years, having a map to show where the peatland is, like that kind of mapping is so vital for our work. And being able to see land use maps, all that kind of stuff is just really fundamental. And we released a big report a few years ago, and we did like a health check of our national parks, and mapping the different land use areas and the different habitats was like a fundamental part of the report. And we used that to lobby government to make changes. It's
right integral to it. And I imagine trying to get funding and all sorts of things, but evidence, as you say, is key. But so we've got a kind of there's a couple of bits about practical tips for people listening about visiting national parks. Have you got any kind of, I don't know, top couple of tips about what to do when you're visiting a national park?
I'd say a big thing that we've seen recently is that do your research, because social media has been really great at raising awareness about areas, but you may only see a tiny bit of someone's journey, and I think it can quite often give not a fully accurate picture of the area, the route,
Yeah.
the weather, those kind of things. And I think it's really important to remember that national parks in the UK contain some very extreme landscapes. You know, if you're climbing to the top of Scafell Pike, that is a mountain, and that requires the time and the energy and the research and due diligence to make sure that, you know, if you're going to climb at the top of it, you're doing it safely and you're following maps and you've got the right equipment and you're wearing the right shoes.
To get back down as well. That's the thing.
Exactly, all that kinds of things. Because we know anecdotally that a lot of like mountain rescue services, they used to get called out for, not very often, but for like really difficult technical rescues of people who've just gotten themselves into really difficult places. And now they get called out very frequently for, you know, like a twisted ankle, people who got lost in the dark, that kind of thing. And so doing the research and taking the time is so important. But there's also the responsibility on national park authorities and other organizations to make it easier for people to understand that, because it's not necessarily people's fault that they see a video and go, oh, that looks amazing, I want to go there. Because I think a lot of us do that. They go, oh, I don't want to sit in my office all day, I want to go for a really nice walk.
It's that balance as well of, you know, authorities sort of telling people you can't do this and you shouldn't do that and please don't do this, to saying please visit, but do it, as you're saying, do it responsibly and take some advice. But it's a really hard balancing act. And I've seen it in the news, these sort of beauty spots in Brecon Beacons, and people are being almost guided from social media to visit, and it becomes like a little bit of a motorway or something, people trying to visit, and the balance of kind of how you manage that one path and the perhaps some litter that's left or whatever it is. So you don't want to be too, don't visit, please don't do this. It must be difficult.
Yeah, it really is, because we want people to visit, because that's what they're there for. But we want to say things like, maybe don't go in the height of summer to this place, maybe go during the week and, you know, at the shoulder seasons, or have you tried going to this area instead, it's equally beautiful. And have you tried using public transport? Like, there is public transport, and we'd love for it to get better, and we campaign on that a lot. But we want people to use it, because if it's on and people don't use it, it will disappear. And so encouraging people to use the public transport services within national parks is going to make them better. Yeah, I can imagine. And from our point, that comes back to what we were saying 15 minutes ago about, yes, there's this one beautiful beauty spot, but actually just go left or right, and there's another one. And maybe there's not 1,000 people there. There's one person there quietly having a cup of tea, but and you get that from working together, as you say. You've got your map, which shows it all, and you've got the guidance and the national park authorities helping you out, and improving that access for everyone, I guess. But so this probably brings us on to this like kind of Mythbuster section or something that we've got titled here. So, does a national park mean you can walk anywhere? That's the first question we had for you. Unfortunately, it doesn't. There's, legally, you still have to follow public rights of ways. There is a lot of open access land in national parks, but whole national parks aren't open access land. You've still got private land ownership, and you've still got private residences and businesses. And so, unfortunately not, you do have to follow rights of way. You'll follow the signs, follow the signs. Use a map, maybe. There you go. Absolutely. And then we get asked this a lot as well, actually, about the differences between the maps we make and, say, let's say Google has a Google map, and if it's on Google Maps, surely therefore we can follow this path, or any advice on that one, any comment on that? Is that something you come across? I mean, just from personal experience, it's so much better to have a map like yours, or a specific walking map, because I don't think Google Maps quite gets the nuance of public footpaths, or something that might look like it's a footpath and it's not, or something that looks like you should be able to go through and it turns out it's not, and then you could spend hours re-walking the way you've just come. And so having maps that are very clear and have all the information you need is going to be much more beneficial for you as a visitor to use while you're there.
That's what we say as well, to be fair. So
There you go.
you wouldn't expect anything less from us, Harriet, would you? But,
No, of course not.
Here we go. Couple of last questions for you then. Have you got if you had to have a favourite map, what do you have one? It's okay if you don't, but do you have one?
I recently moved up to Chester, and as part of my me sort of getting back into my map skills after sort of not having them since Duke of Edinburgh, and I was a teenager and I kind of hated it, and I was like, I think I'm going to like it, and I have been really enjoying it. And so I got a map recently of the Clwydian Range, which is I can see from Chester very clearly. And I just and
that's the one that's going to form a part of the new national park. Yeah, okay. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah. No,
it's so true. And so I like just taking it and going, okay, where can I go today? And purely for the purposes of like improving my own map reading ability, but also because you tend to explore differently when you're using a map than compared to if you go, oh, this place on Google Maps looks nice, I'm going to drive to it and kind of walk around it. You can see, oh, here's an ancient woodland, or here is a Iron Age hill fort. And so it's been so amazing to use this map and be able to explore my local area so thoroughly and be able to do something new every single time I go.
I think that's really interesting. So we've started a small campaign all about called The Journey Matters, actually, and it's about, you're right. If you've just got a phone and a point and it says go to this area and then you explore, you miss that whole section, which could include planning your walk, the bits in between, the effort it takes to do that. So that's an interesting one. Have you visited every national park?
No, I've got 2 left, so I'm very, very close. I want to go to the North York Moors this year. And then I haven't been to Loch Lomond and the Trossachs, so I'll have to come up and visit you.
Absolutely. Come in, and we're right on our doorstep. So we're just outside Stirling and Callander, which is right on the eastern edge. But
nice.
And the North York Moors as well. I remember going on a survey trip there when I was a cartographer. We made a map of the North York Moors, and we go and walk it. I just remember standing on the top of the North York Moors watching this thunderstorm just come in from a distance, and I was thinking, I've got nowhere to hide here, and I'm going to get wet. And I did. I got very wet. And finally, your favourite national park?
This is I think, and for everyone who campaigns for national parks, this is such a difficult question, because I'm always tempted to say
ostracised if you say the wrong thing, isn't it?
And I think we're all very diplomatic, and we go, oh, all the national parks are our favourites, but there's always a special place in my heart for the South Downs, because I grew up there, and I predate the national park, because it was only designated in 2010, so I was there before the national park. But I think my favourite is Exmoor, and I think it's because it's quite an understated national park. It's not one of the really busy ones, but it's got such a beautiful variety of landscapes, and it's got really tall sea cliffs, and it's got beautiful heathlands and moorlands, river valleys, and these really cool areas of local interest. Like there's a funicular, like a Victorian funicular that you can go up at Linton and Lynmouth. And I used to go there every autumn half term as a child growing up, and now I sort of meet my family there every year, and it's such and in the autumn it's beautiful because there's so much woodlands, and so it's just sort of orange and red hues, and I love it so much.
We made a map of Exmoor just a few years ago, actually, and that was the most recent national park that we've mapped, and it was a big project for us, and the team that went down, they loved it. Actually, they went down it might have been this time of year. There was a bit of snow on the ground, and the ponies were out and saying hello. But they absolutely, we thought it was a really beautiful area. So and then is there anything that you want to any campaigns that you want to highlight that you're working on at the moment? Or
yes, so it's been quite a challenging time for campaigning at the moment, because the political climate is, instead of making progress, we're just trying to hold on to what we've got. And so our current campaign, and it's actually a campaign that we're doing with loads of other environmental organisations, because we're all slightly worried about certain pieces of legislation that are coming through. And so we're trying to hold on to this really key piece of legislation, which before 2023, public bodies like water companies and the Forestry Commission, they had to pay due regard to national parks, which kind of doesn't really mean anything. And so we got the law changed so they have to show how they're improving the purposes of national parks. And it sounds really small, but it's such a vital and important piece of legislation, because it means that you can't put an A road through the middle of a national park. You can't carry on spitting sewage into national parks. You have to make them better. But because it can kind of be seen as like, we can't just get on with the work that we want to do. There's lots of pressure to remove this law. We've only had it for a year and a half. And so we're really fighting tooth and nail to keep key pieces of legislation like this. So if anybody wants to go to cmp.org.uk to see the campaigns that we're working on, the supporters, by writing a letter or donating, then that's how people can get involved.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic. I'd encourage everyone listening to do so, and have a look at the website as well, and look at all the kind of work that you guys are doing. But thank you, Harriet. It's really interesting to talk to you about national parks and maps and so on. But thanks again, and I hope you enjoyed being on the podcast.
I really did. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And it sort of inspired me to go out soon with my map and
go to the North York Moors. Go to tick off one of those two. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Brilliant. Thanks again, Harriet. Thanks for joining us on Unfolded.
Thank you.
Many thanks to Harriet from Campaign for National Parks for joining us on this episode. If you enjoyed the episode, and please do follow the podcast and join us next time on Unfolded.